I want you to picture something for me. You are 43 years old. It is a Wednesday night. You are sitting at your kitchen table. There is a glass of whiskey next to you, maybe a beer, whatever your thing is. And in front of you is a check. $38,000. That number represents everything. The last of your savings account. The tail end of a small inheritance you got when your uncle passed. The emergency fund you spent 3 years building. Every last dollar you had liquid. But you feel good about it. You feel more than good. You feel proud. Because this check is going to the bank. And when they cash it, your mortgage is done. Finished. 30 years of debt wiped out in one moment. You lick the envelope. You drive to the mailbox. You drop it in. And that night, you sleep better than you have in years. You tell your spouse. You call your parents. Your dad says he is proud of you. Your mom cries a little. You post something on Facebook and 37 people like it. Debt-free at 43. You did it. Now let me tell you what happens next. 7 months later, your company does a round of layoffs. Your entire department gets restructured. You are out. No severance. Just a box and a parking lot. You get home and you open your bank account. It has got maybe $400 in it. Because you sent everything else to the bank, remember? You have got bills coming. You have got a car making a noise that sounds expensive. You have got a kid who needs school supplies. Normal life stuff, except you have no income and no cash. But here's the thing. Your house is worth $600,000. You have every single dollar of that equity sitting right there. $500,000 in a building you sleep inside. So you go to the bank. You ask for a home equity line of credit. You figure this is easy. You own the whole thing outright. They should be throwing money at you. And the loan officer looks at you and says, "We cannot approve you without verifiable income. You are asset rich and completely, totally, dangerously broke." That is the liquidity trap, and it is real. And it is something that almost nobody in the personal finance space talks about honestly, because the debt-free message is too clean and too emotionally satisfying to complicate with math. My name is Dobers, and today I'm going to complicate it with math. Let me back up and explain where the obsession with paying off the house even comes from, because it is not crazy. It actually made complete sense for a very long time. Go back to the 1970s and 1980s. Mortgage rates were brutal. We are talking 12%, 14%, 16% in some cases. If you had a mortgage at 15%, paying it off was one of the best financial moves you could make. You were getting a guaranteed 15% return by eliminating that interest. The stock market could not consistently beat that. So the advice was simple. Get out of debt as fast as possible. It will set you free. That advice got passed down, generation to generation. Your grandparents told your parents told you, debt is bad, pay it off, own your home. That is how you build security. And for them, in that era, it was mostly correct. But here's the problem. We do not live in that era anymore. We live in an era where people locked in mortgages at 2.75%. Some of you watching this right now have rates under 4%, and you are still sprinting to pay those off because the emotional wiring from 3 generations ago is still running in your brain. You are following advice designed for a completely different financial environment, and it is costing you. Let me break down the actual math here because this is where people check out and they should not. When you make an extra payment on your mortgage, what you are really doing is making an investment. That is it. That is all it is. You are deploying capital. The return on that investment is whatever your interest rate is. Period. Full stop. If your rate is 4%, your return is 4%. If your rate is 3.5%, your return is 3.5%. That is the ceiling. Now, I want you to look at that number and ask yourself a simple question. Is that a good investment? The S&P 500 has averaged somewhere between 9 and 11% annually over the last several decades, depending on what time window you look at. Treasury bonds right now are yielding over 4%. High-yield savings accounts were pushing 5% not long ago. Real estate investment trusts, dividend stocks, index funds, all of these have historically outperformed a 3 or 4% return. So what you are doing when you pay down a low-interest mortgage early is voluntarily choosing the worst option available. You are passing on an 8 or 9 or 10% return to get a 3 or 4% return, and you are feeling virtuous while you do it. That is not discipline. That is fear with good branding. I want to talk about something called arbitrage because this concept will change how you see debt forever. Walk into any bank. Ask them how they make money. The basic answer is this. They borrow your money at a low rate, they turn around and lend it back out at a higher rate. They keep the difference. That difference is called the spread, and it is the foundation of how financial institutions build wealth. You can do the exact same thing, in reverse. If a bank lent you money at 3.8% and you can earn 9% by investing it, that 5.2% gap belongs to you every single year. You are literally profiting off of cheap borrowed money. That is not reckless. That is what wealthy people do intentionally and repeatedly their entire lives. Think about it this way. Imagine someone hands you a loan at 3.5% interest and says, "Here, go invest this." Any reasonably diversified portfolio should beat that over a long time horizon. You would take that deal without blinking. Your mortgage is that deal. It is already in your hands. Every extra dollar you throw at it instead of investing is a dollar you are pulling back from the table. Now let me paint you a picture that is going to be uncomfortable to look at. Say your mortgage payment is $1,900 a month. You decide you want to pay this thing off in 18 years instead of 30, so you add $800 extra every single month. You are putting $800 toward principal above and beyond your normal payment. Feels responsible, feels intentional. Dave Ramsey might actually send you a card. But let's look at what that $800 a month actually does if you invest it instead. Over 30 years at a 9.5% average annual return, that $800 a month becomes somewhere around $1.8 million. But you do not just invest for 18 years. You keep going the full 30. Because you still have the mortgage and you are still investing, you do not stop. Compare that to the person who paid the house off early. They have a house. Let's say it appreciated well and it is worth $750,000. And they have whatever they managed to save after the mortgage was gone, which, based on how most people actually behave when a payment disappears, is not nearly as much as they planned, because life expanded to fill the payment. It always does. The gap between those two people at retirement is not small. We are talking about a difference that could easily exceed $1 million in net worth, all because one person was scared of a 3.8% interest rate. Speaking of what people actually do when the mortgage is paid off, there is a concept in psychology called lifestyle inflation. Parkinson's law is the economics version of it. It basically says that spending expands to meet available income. You get a raise, your expenses go up. You pay off a debt, the money finds somewhere else to go. People say all the time that once the mortgage is paid off, they will just redirect that payment into investments. And some of them do. But most of them take a nicer vacation. They upgrade the kitchen. They lease a better car. The payment turns into consumption, and the wealth building they planned never actually happens. The mortgage payment forces a kind of budget discipline by default. It is a recurring non-negotiable that keeps money moving out of your hands before it can get comfortable. When you invest instead of paying it down, you replicate that same discipline intentionally. The money is earmarked before you can spend it. You see it growing. You are motivated to leave it alone. Here is an angle that almost never comes up in these conversations. A fully paid off home actually increases your liability exposure in certain situations. Stay with me. If someone sues you and wins a judgment, they are going to look at your assets. A house sitting there with zero debt and full equity is an extremely attractive target. There is no complexity, no lien in the way, just clean, accessible equity. But if you have a mortgage and 75 or 80% of the home's value is still owed to a lender, there is almost nothing for a creditor to pursue there. The bank is first in line. You look leveraged on paper, not wealthy, not worth chasing. Meanwhile, your real money is sitting in a brokerage account, which has its own set of protections depending on your state. You are harder to get to. You look poorer on paper than you actually are. Wealthy people structure their finances this way on purpose, not by accident. Let me address the argument I know is forming in your head right now. What about market crashes? What if I invest instead of paying down the mortgage and then the market drops 40% and I still have the payment due every month? This is the most common pushback and I respect it. But here is why it does not break the argument. If you have been investing that extra money for several years, you have a growing pool of liquid assets. When the market drops, that pool shrinks on paper, but it is still there. You can still access it. You can still sell something and cover your mortgage payment if income dries up. The person with the paid-off house and nothing invested has no pool at all. When things go sideways, they have walls. That is it. Walls do not pay bills. The liquid investor has options in a crisis. The homeowner with no mortgage and no savings has a very nice house they might not be able to afford to stay in. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you there is never a scenario where paying off the mortgage makes sense. If your rate is above 8% right now, the calculation changes. A guaranteed 8 or 9% return by eliminating that debt is genuinely hard to beat consistently in the market. Pay it down. That math works. And if you know yourself, if you know without any doubt that the extra money will not get invested, it will get spent, then the mortgage becomes your savings vehicle by default. Forced savings beats no savings. There is no shame in that. But if you are someone who is actually going to invest, the alternative, if you are watching this and taking notes, then carrying a low-rate mortgage and investing the difference is almost certainly the better financial path by a wide margin. So here is what I want you to do this week. Look at your mortgage statement. Find whatever extra you are currently sending above the minimum, even if it is $300 a month, even if it is $150. Take that number. Open a brokerage account if you do not already have one. Set up an automatic transfer for that same amount into a simple broad market index fund on the same day you would have made the extra mortgage payment. Then do not touch it. Let it build. Come back in 3 years and look at it. You will feel the same discipline. You will feel the same intentionality. But you will also have access to that money if you ever actually need it. And it will be growing at a rate that has no ceiling. A paid-off house is a gold statue. Beautiful to look at, impossible to eat when things go wrong. A growing investment account is a working machine. It does not sit there looking impressive. It just keeps building and building and building. And when a real emergency comes, and one will, you will not be standing at a bank asking permission to access your own money. You will already have it. If this video made you rethink anything, share it with someone in your life who is throwing everything at their mortgage. They need the math more than they need the motivation. Subscribe if you are not already. I will catch you in the next one.